Hey everybody, welcome back. Okay, so let's continue on with this. Now currently we have our thing here. What we want to do is start writing the JavaScript. So we can add a JavaScript file, and we can just do it like, we could write JavaScript in like this, and then just start doing, we could console log here from JS. And if we were to save this and then refresh this page and then look in the console, we would see that on the console we have from JS. You see it's coming through. So we could do it like that. But the way that I want to do it here is because we don't want to write our JavaScript all in this HTML file. I want to add a separate file. And so if we go back over to the terminal, you'll see that we're in the 23 or the 25 and 5 clock. And so I'm just going to touch a file that says clockbrain.js. Okay. And then if I list that, you can see that that's open. So then I can open in Google Chrome the clockbrain. Oops, not Google Chrome, but in Atom. Cool, so now we have that. Now instead of saying from JS in here, we can put this, get rid of this, and then say source is equal to clockbrain.js. And then we want to keep the close script tag here. And now if I save that and I put this guy console log here and I save this and we refresh, we see that it's coming from JS, but from clockbrain file. And so you can see that it's showing up here, clockbrain file. Okay, cool. So now that we've got our JavaScript file set up, we can kind of move away from this file for a bit. But what I want to do now is set up, I want to connect, so I'm going to separate these into separate things. And so what I want to do now is I want to use get element by ID to get a JavaScript connection to each of the buttons, right? So we've got a break label here. Now we don't need to do anything with the label, so we're just looking for the buttons. So here we've got the buttons. And so I'm just going to say break. Okay, so we're going to start setting up the variables. So we can say let break increment equal document.get element by ID, and the ID is break increment. Cool. And I'm just going to make this button so we know break increment button. Now I'm going to copy this and do it again, and instead of saying break increment, we want to say decrement button, and then here we'll go decrement. So now if I were to save this and go back to our clock and refresh, if we were to look at the variable in the Chrome window, you can see that it actually highlights it. Chrome just automatically highlights it. But if we were to enter this into the console, so now we've got this button saved as a JavaScript variable. And so then we'll be able to do stuff with it. So yeah, we've got these guys done. As you can see, we've got these ones. The ones that we just created are adding these as variables. So now we want to add these as variables as well. And so we'll go back to the Atom. Here we're going to have another one, session increment. So I'm just going to copy this again. And here we can change this. And I'm pressing Command and click in order to do two cursors. And so now we can go session. And then we've got session increment and decrement. And so here we can do the same thing. Again, pressing Command and clicking again. And then this is session, decrement, and increment. So now we've got those buttons correct. We can copy this again. And we have finally our other ones. Get element by ID. We can do start, stop, and reset. So here, yeah, this doesn't help us to do that. Start, stop button. And then here we have our reset button. Cool. And we want to get these by their proper names. So start, stop, and reset. Cool. So now we've assigned all of the buttons to JavaScript variables, and then we can start doing things with them. So that's good for that. I'm going to move the index file back over here, and we can just refresh the page, and you can see that we have all of our buttons are highlightable. So our reset button shows up as that guy. So it looks like that's good for now. Okay, so the next thing I think that we're going to want to do, we want to get the numbers in, right? We want to get session length, break length, and I don't know, I'm going to have to come up with a word for that. So I'm going to move this index. Let's bring it back. Okay. Bring it like that. Okay, and so here we've got our buttons. Here we have, this is it. Okay, break length. So let's say break length ETH equal to the document dot get element by ID, and we're gonna get the element by the ID, right? Break dash length. And again, this is just setting it up so that we have variables that we can work with in JavaScript and outside of the HTML. And so our next one is session length. There's the ID. I guess we could just copy this. It's going to be almost the same. And so this one will be, instead of break, I'm just going to command click here, and we can go session length. And then finally, our third one is time left. And so we'll just make it the same thing. I think we can do the same thing. So just copy this, paste it here, and we'll make this time left. Time left. But this JavaScript, we use camel case, and in HTML, we use that hyphen case, maybe. Okay, cool. So now if I save that, let's bring this back over here, put that back there. And if we refresh here, we can see we'll have session length, break length right there. And then we also have start stop, was it? Start stop button. Oh, that was it. But essentially we've got that. If we were to look here, time left. Time left. Yeah, and so that's that guy. If we were to do time left dot inner text, we have that. I wonder if HTML could use either one. So inner text, I think, would be the one I want to go. And so that gives us 60. And with 60, we could do something like split by the colon, and then we would have a variable that would be an array with 60 and 10. And there, so that now we split up. I guess this is 60 seconds. With zeros in here. We don't even want it to be 60 seconds. We want it to be 25. So I'm not sure why that was there. So I'll save that, refresh here. We've got 25. So let's do that again. Time left dot split by the colon. This gives us, wait a second, did I get that right? Time left dot inner text dot split, and we want to split the inside of it by the colon, right? That'll give us an amount there. And then from this, we can use this to get the numbers, right? So this one at position 0. So that just means getting the first element, that's 25. And then with that, we could go to integer. Is that right? To integer in JavaScript? Okay. Parse int. Okay, parse int 10. Okay. So the way that we would do this is we would say, instead of to integer, that's just Java. I'm just going back to the Ruby world. We would parse int. Cool. And so with that, we could do something. Then we're dealing with integers, so +1. So that would give us 26, right? So 25, 26. I mean, when we're doing it on the countdown from a second perspective, we'll be doing -1. And that's basically the essence of it. So the next thing I want to talk about is the interval. So I think it's set interval, is a JavaScript command. This one takes a callback function. So we can go like this, and then we'll have something in here. And then it takes, as a secondary one, a milliseconds in which it operates again. So here, I'm just going to say console.log TikTok, right? tick/talk, because I'm not going to do... This is just a simple way to show how we're going to create the timer, right? So here we've got their set interval, and we're calling this. And so each time that this function runs, it's going to say tick or talk. So when I press enter, you see it's going to say tick/talk. And what's happening here is it's just going to keep running this. And this is the essential way that we're going to do the timer. So yeah, let's move over to the clock brain, and we can do let our timer equal our set interval of tick-tock. And so here, I think if I save this and refresh over here and I go timer, yeah, so now we've got it incrementing down. Okay, so our timer is incrementing, but it's not working over here, right? We want to actually make the session seconds go down. Okay, so what I'm noticing now is that the timer keeps going. So I want to be able to make it so that we can reset the timer. If I want to click this, I want to be able to click this reset button and stop that. So what we want to do is get the reset button, and we want to add an event listener. And we want to do this on a click. So this add event listener takes two parameters. There's a click, and then it's going to take a function, a callback function. So we could do this like a callback function, like that's kind of traditional JavaScript. But for this one, I think that we were pretty happy with doing ES6 now. So we'll do it like this. And so on the click, right now, if we were to console.log, just to prove that we've got it, reset button clicked. If I were to save this and refresh over here, we can go reset, and it says reset button clicked. So now what we want to do is use we've got the set interval, we've got a variable set to this interval, and so we want to clear it. So we'll go clear interval, and we want to say which interval do we want to clear? We want to clear the timer interval. Okay, cool. So now if I save this and refresh over here, we'll see that because our timer is instantiated right here, it's just going to start up right when we refresh the page. So that's why it's going here. And so now we'll see what happens when I say clear. Now you see that it's stopped going. So to show the difference, if we were to click the start or stop button, it doesn't make a difference. None of these buttons change whether or not it's clicking. But if we hit the reset button, you'll see that the timer has stopped. Cool, so now we have a reset button. What else is the reset button going to do? Well, it's going to reset this back to 25, and this back to 5, and this back to 25. Now, these are all set already, so that doesn't mean much to us right now. But we're going to want to be able to do that. So we have our break length, our time left. So well, one thing that I'm noticing is if I refresh this page, the timer starts off right away, right? We're saying tick-tock each time. We don't want that to happen. We only want the timer to start working when we hit the start-stop button. Sure, we can stop it with reset right now, but we want to make it so that the start-stop button is what creates the timer, the set interval situation. Now, from previous experience, I know that we need to instantiate the timer outside of the start-stop button. Okay, we'll start off with the start-stop button, right? So we have our start-stop button, and this we're going to do the same thing, add an event listener, and then on a click, so this is just like we did below, we want to, well, first we can just console.log and say start-stop button clicked. And then here, what do we want to do? Well, we want to start the timer, okay? So what we can do is say timer is equal to set interval. Well, yeah, we'll actually just take this whole bit. And then we can just leave the timer instantialized out here. And then we'll get rid of the equal sign here. So now if we save this and we refresh the page, we don't have our timer running. We're not seeing that tick-tock situation. Now, if we started it, we'd see our start button was clicked, and now we're getting the tick-tock. And it looks like if we run it again, it starts it again. Oh, now it's running twice. Okay, so it's getting ugly. If we were to clear it, it looks like we just cleared one. And if we were to clear it again, looks like it just cleared one again. Interesting. You would think, oh, but it's starting from the beginning again. So we're clearing it, but it's not stopping. Huh, interesting. I thought it would stop. Anyways. So yeah, we've got to deal with making it so that it can start and stop. So I think what we're going to need is a variable, timer status, right? And then this is going to be, we could set this equal to, well, I'm thinking that it's going to be like a begin, counting and stopped. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do this right now, but for now, we'll just say it's in the begin status. Okay, so now if we save this, I'm going to refresh the page here. And so what we want to do is make it so that the start-stop button needs to be able to start and stop. This is the functionality for it to be started. So start the timer. So what we want to do is have it vary based on the timer status. So if the timer status is equal to begin, I think we can do triple equals here. Then we want to do this, right? So I'm going to cut that and paste it into here. And then I guess we want to say else because we don't want to run both ways. So if it's at begin, what we want to do here is we want to set it to set the timer. And once we click the begin button, if it's to begin, we want to say status is equal to, the timer status is equal to counting, right? And if you're wondering why I put this behind here, this was just for me to think about this. This is just a commented out code. So we make our timer status to counting. And then so that way, else, when we come back here, else if the timer status is equal to counting, then we want to set the timer status equal to stopped. And then we want to say clear interval, and we want to clear the interval of the timer. So, and then I'll add a console log here so we can see that just in case it's kind of hard to understand. We want to say stop the timer. Okay, so right now we have it. So this is this is what happens when you start the timer. And this is what happens when you stop the timer. Cool. So let's save that and refresh over here and see what happens. So we can hit the start button. So we've started the timer and then our TikTok's going. And now hopefully we can stop the timer and we're not getting TikToks anymore. Okay, cool. So that seems to be working. It's stopped. So now I bet if we were to say our timer status, it's equal to stopped. Now, there's going to be some other functionality in there because I think if we were to click it again, we would want to say, we would want it to say if it's either begin or if the timer status is equal to stopped, then we want to start the timer. And if it's equal to counting, we don't want to do that. So, timer status is equal to counting. Yeah, when it's counting, we want it to stop. So, when it's counting, we want the timer to stop. But if it's stopped or in the begin phase, we want the timer to go. Man, this is crazy. Refresh the page. Let's see how it works. Start. Here we're getting it. So we can see the timer's working. We can stop the timer. And there's no timer tick-tocking. And we can start the timer again. And it's working again. And so we can stop it. Now, doesn't have anything to do with the reset button. But, yeah, that's a good thing. Now, you see the reset button also uses this clear interval for timer, which is pretty cool. So we're starting to see patterns here. I think the next thing that we're going to have to do, I'm going to refresh the page over here. The next thing we're going to have to do is figure out how to make it so that the numbers here actually start decrementing. And to do that, we will create a new function. So function decrement time, and we're going to do something in here. Okay, so, I'm going to actually open up a JavaScript thing, right? So I'm going to just touch practice or just sandbox.js. Now, you probably don't have to do this because what I'm doing here is I'm just going to make it so that I can explain this kind of efficiently. I'm going to actually delete this program later, but here we have sandbox.js. Okay, so what I'm going to do in the sandbox is I'm just going to do decrement time, and then here we can console.log decrement time, and we're going to pass in a string of 25:00. And then let's say we're going to make this the time string, and here we'll console.log the time string plus decremented. All I'm doing here is setting up a sandbox where we can play. Okay, tim string, that's not going to work. Oops. Timeout string. Okay, and now I can press Command I and run that, and you can see where you get 25 decremented. So now we can play with this, because what we want to come out of here is the result we're trying to get is to pass in a string and return a string. So we want 2459 to come out. Cool. So this is going to be the way that we want it to work. So this is the function of decrementing the time. We pass in a decrement time, and then we return it. Actually, what we want to do is return it, right? So I'm going to say return here. And now, okay, so now our function's working. So for the first second, this decrement time function would work. So if we took that back over here and we did decrement time, instead of saying, so we pass in the time string. So now what we could do is take our decrement time, and if we took it up to here, we're decrementing the time string. This is going to take, and we want to take, what is our time string? If we come up here, we can see our time left is this guy. Time left is here. So time left dot inner text is equal to 25. So we can pass time left inner text into our decrement time. Okay, so this would actually take our 25 and return it as 2459. And if we were to do our, which one was it? Time left. Yeah, if we set time left inner text to decrement time, this is going to work for the first second, right? So if we refresh and we start, it works for the first second. But now it's not going to work anymore because all we're doing is solving for the first initial case. So now what we need to do is figure out how to make decrement time work the way it's supposed to. So the first thing we're going to want to do is take the time that's being passed in and split it, right? I think we talked a little bit that initially. So we can say let our time, or like our time display, equal to the time string dot split, and we're going to split it based on that. And then we can say so now once we have our time string split, we can say we're going to have an array of a string of 24 and 39. So we can say our second display is equal to our time display at position 1, because that's going to be 0, 1. 59, or where it is 0, 0 will be that. And then we're going to say let our minute display equal our time display at position 0, right? And so, cool. So right now on our first instance being passed in, oh, and another thing is I want to turn these into integers right now. So parse int. Because right now, what we're working with is strings, and it's very difficult to convert strings because we want to be able to do things like subtract and add them. So we've got our second display and our minute display. Now this thing's going to be clicked every time because it is within a. Actually, we're going to put it within the interval. So I'm actually going to take this out and put it, instead of tick-tock here, I'm going to put it here. And that is going to make it so that we run this decrement time each time. And yeah, so actually what we want to do is instead of, we want to return that time left dot inner text is equal to decrement time. Cool. So now I think, now we have our seconds display and our minute display. I'm going to put the minute display on top because it's bigger. So I'm pressing Command and Control in Atom just to push it to the top. Okay. And so what we want to do is make the second display, this will start at 0. We want it to go down because we're going to be counting down by seconds. So we're going to take our second display and we're going to say it minus equals 1. And so this will actually make it so it goes to -1 initially. But you know what? For now, that's not that big of a deal. Let me just, now we want to return something actually that works, right? So what we can do is we can return the minute display plus the colon and add the second display. Cool. And so now if I save this, I think if we return over here, we're going to get, and we've got it displaying within the interval. So this should run each time that it goes. And so now what I'm hoping is when I press start, this is going to start going down. Parse int, pair int. Oh, it's not a thing. So P-A-R-S-E, parse int. Okay, so I'll save that, refresh, and start. Cool. So we're displaying it. It's working. But the problem is it's not working the way it's supposed to, right? So what we want to say is if the second display is equal to -1, we want to say that the second display, we want to change it. If it's equal to -1, we want to say that it's equal to 59. And we want to take our minute display and take it down by 1. Second display, 59, minute display, -1. Cool. And so let's save that and we can refresh now. And now when I press start, it should go 49.50. Yeah. So it's going to keep on going like that. So now we have our decremented time working to some degree. I still see there's being some problems. You know, for instance, once this gets down to 4 or 3 or any numbers between 0 and 9, it's not going to have an additional 0 in there. So we want to add a second conditional, right? So if the second display is less than or equal to 9, then we want to make second display equal to 0 plus the second display. Now I think that'll work with JavaScript, right? So if you go 0 plus 9, cool. So that will work. Some people will be not upset with that. So this should go down to 0 now. Let's just set the second display to 12 here so that we can just test it because I don't want to wait a whole minute for it to happen here. So I'm going to reset and then press start, and now it should be down to 12, 11, 10, 9. Cool. So that added the 0. If we didn't have this in here, if we comment this out and we refresh the page and do the start, you can see that it would go to 9 like that. And so we were just preemptively solving that problem. Okay, so we don't want to keep this at 12. That was just for demonstration purposes. So I'll put that back to 59. Refresh the page here. Okay, so I do believe this is good for now. This has been part 2, so I'll pick it up in part 3 where we'll work on the session length decrement buttons, the break length decrement buttons, and just making sure to wrap this thing up. But for now, this we've got the start and stop working pretty well. So we can start it here. It'll go down to 24 and it'll go all the way down to 0. I believe right now it'll continue to go down to 0, go down past 0, but for now it's working, and we can stop it. And if we started it again, it continues to work the way it's supposed to, and we can reset the timer. Oh, the reset button doesn't work. So that'll be another thing that we solve in the next part of the video. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you in the next video.